What's up everybody? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. So today I'm going to show you how to disassemble your hub and brake assembly so that you can remove the axle shaft from a Dana 60 front axle. This Dana 60 is in a 1986 Chevy D30, but a K30 Dana 60, a Dodge Dana 60, and a Kingpin style Ford Dana 60 all have the same process to get the brakes off, get the hubs off, and be able to actually pull that axle shaft out of the differential. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get the brake caliper off. On the Chevy axles, the brake caliper is held in with a retention pin. So on mine, it's a 1/4-inch Allen headed bolt. We'll get in there, break it loose, run your bolt right out, and then you need a punch and a hammer. And you'll see here, this piece of metal actually moves, and there's a spring underneath that holds tension on the caliper. So you use your punch to drive this piece of metal out sideways. And then you get the spring and the little retainer out. Set those aside. Now your caliper is free. It's not being held in by anything. So you pull the bottom out first, and then your caliper comes right out, okay? Your outer pad should stay with the caliper. Your inner brake pad is held in place by the caliper bracket, but you can just tip that in towards the center to remove that also. Once you've got the brake caliper removed, now you can actually work on getting the hub out. On my truck, I have manual locking hubs, and they are held in place with T25 Torx headed bolts. So I always go through, break them loose by hand, and these shouldn't be very tight. Once they're all broken loose, you can just run them out with your air ratchet. There we go. Once you get your 6 bolts loose, you should be able to just wiggle and pull that cap out. And I like to lay all my pieces out on a nice clean rag. Now what just happened there isn't supposed to happen. There should be a screw, a small flathead screw that retains this inner ring. I'm gonna have to get this washed before I put it back in. And it looks like there's a screw here, but it's not the right one. Somebody must have lost the correct screw and put another one in here. But assuming that piece had stayed in there like it's supposed to, there's 2 snap rings that hold your locking hub assembly in. One is an external snap ring that goes into the outside of the hub. There's a groove machined in there for it. You should be able to just pull that out with a flathead screwdriver. Just like so. And then there's another snap ring that goes over the end of your axle shaft. Once you have those 2 snap rings off, you can put some of your hub cap retaining screws on here and just thread them in a few threads, and then you can pull out the rest of the manual hub assembly. Let me move the camera and I'll show you what's behind there. Okay, so once you get your manual hub assembly pulled out, you'll see the splines in the outside of the hub. This is your axle shaft here, and then the spindle itself is back here. Now on that spindle, you've got 2 nuts. The first nut doesn't have anything retaining it. It's the lock nut. So you'll need a special socket. You can get them at most auto parts stores or online to spin this outer nut off. Once that outer nut is off, there's a small lock plate that holds the inner nut and prevents it from being able to turn. Let me get this outer nut off and then I'll show you what I mean. This is the special socket I was talking about. See, it has 4 little tips that poke out. Those go into the 4 slots on the nut. Now this outer nut shouldn't be crazy tight. There we go. Once you break it loose, your air rack shouldn't have any trouble spinning it out. Just take it, lay it on your nice clean rag, and that gives you access to the locking nut, or the locking washer rather. So on the top of the spindle here, there's a little groove machine, and there's holes in this lock washer. So let me see if I can get it out. Now the lock washer also has a little tab that goes into that groove. There we go. So you can see this little tab here locks into the groove, and these little holes are for a little pin that sticks out of the inside nut. And you line up the hole with the pin and the groove with the tang, and that prevents your inner nut from backing off or getting loose. So now that I have my lock washer out of the way, I can get my inner nut off, and that'll make it possible for me to pull the whole spindle and brake rotor assembly off. There we go. There's my inner nut. Hopefully you can see it. There's my inner nut, and you can see a little tip that sticks out there. That's what locks into the lock ring and keeps this nut from being able to back off. It's really important when you put it back together that you put this nut in first and that you have the little pin pointed out towards you. Otherwise, you're going to smash it in and you're not going to have the locking of that lock ring. Okay, now we've got our manual locking hub out of the way. We've got our bearing retention nuts and preload nuts removed, so we'll be able to just slide the hub and rotor assembly straight out off of the spindle. Just like that. Pretty easy. Now, once your spindle or your hub assembly is off the spindle, I like to give everything a visual inspection. The next thing you're going to need to do is remove your dust plate and your brake caliper mounting bracket. And there's just 6 3/4 inch nuts. All right, so I'm going to get these 6 nuts taken off. You know, and each nut has a little lock washer behind it. Then your outer splash shield can come off. Then your inner dust shield can come off. And then your brake caliper bracket can come off. And that just leaves your spindle onto the knuckle. Now the spindle is a very tight machine fit to the knuckle. They make a special tool that you can use to remove it. It threads on to where your spindle nuts go and then pushes against the axle shaft. You can also get it off of there with a dead blow, soft-faced hammer. And that's how I'm gonna do it. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe all this grease off. I'll repack with new grease when I put it all back together. Take your dead blow hammer, And you're just gonna tap on it. I mean, you're actually gonna hit it. Did you see it pulled that out of the machine fit? Then give it a tap up, down, and you just work it off. There. Once you get it loose of that machine fit, you can pull it all the way out. This one's super dirty, so I'm probably gonna clean that while I have it apart. Now I'm able to pull my axle shaft straight out. Just like that. You can pull your axle shaft all the way out. If you need to replace or service the U-joints, this is a good time. If you have a broken shaft, obviously you'll replace it. And going back together is the exact opposite process. Put everything back in the opposite order that you took it off. Make sure you have plenty of grease in your bearings, and that's pretty much it. All right, everybody. So we've got our axle shaft clear to be removed. We'll get everything cleaned up, but hopefully you found this helpful. It answered questions and you were able to get yours apart as easily as mine came apart. And I appreciate you watching. If you found it helpful, make sure you subscribe so you can see this and other technical tips along the way. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care.